For Halloween last year, I had plans to go to a party with a bunch of friends. It was supposed to be a house party at a mutual friend's place, but just on the morning of Halloween, the plans fell through. I'd already slept in and woken up super late, having planned to stay up all night at the party. Without it happening, I guess I just had to hang around alone at home. I spent the day as I would any other and eventually found myself on the couch for the evening. It was well past trick-or-treat hours, and although I wasn't sleepy, I was definitely tired just from being bored all day. I grabbed a blanket and some snacks, then turned on an old horror movie to pass the time with. The way my living room was set up, my couch was along the wall with the TV in front. To the left was the kitchen, and to the right was the front windows of my house. I almost always kept the curtains closed for privacy, especially at night. But during the movie, several times I thought I'd seen something move between the gap and the curtains. I'd turn my head and look, and there was nothing, so I'd forget about it until it happened again. Finally, after the fifth or sixth time, I actually got up to look. I fully expected not to see anything. I pushed the curtains aside and looked out the window. Right away, I saw someone outside my house. Not right out by the window, like I thought whatever I'd been seeing was. This guy was out in the street in front of my house. He was an adult for sure, maybe in his 30s, but had a dark Halloween costume on. He was just walking around aimlessly, going up to the sidewalk, then turning back around and crossing the street. The way he was acting made it look like he was drunk. I mean, I would have bet money this guy was walking home from a Halloween party, completely hammered. I looked down at my watch, noting it was 1 a.m. He didn't look like a danger or anything, though, and I didn't think he was what I'd been seeing moving around outside my window because he was too far away. I closed the curtains and went back to the couch to continue the movie. The curtains, even when fully closed, still had a gap between them, but I didn't see any more movement. It actually made me more curious now that I'd looked out the window. Whatever I'd been seeing had stopped. However, just 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I darted my eyes across the room and stared at the door for a moment. It had to be that drunk guy. I was almost sure of it. I didn't get up, hoping he'd just forget about it and leave. But then he knocked again. I went over just to verify it was him. I looked out and saw that same guy with the dark costume on. But something was different. He wasn't stumbling around or swaying or anything like that. The man stood still, almost motionless, just staring at the door. Even through the peephole, I could see his eyes were wide open and fixed on the door handle, waiting for me to open it. I started getting really creeped out. If he were drunk, how the hell was he standing perfectly still and not fumbling around? Especially if he were as drunk as he looked just 10 minutes ago. It made me think he might not be drunk at all. It might have just been some lunatic, which was way more concerning. I was really debating calling the police, but just when I was starting to think about it, the man left my doorstep and walked away. He went down the sidewalk for as long as I could see and looked like he was done with whatever the hell he was doing. I left the door and sat back down. For the next few hours, I really had nothing else worth noting. I ended up having some wine, hoping it'd make me sleepy so I could just go to bed. I knew if I even tried to sleep, though, I'd just be sitting up awake in bed staring at the ceiling. But as I was sitting on the couch scrolling on my phone, I suddenly heard a tapping noise. It was from the opposite end of the house. I got up, moving a bit closer and trying to figure out what it was and where exactly it was coming from. It sounded like dull tapping somewhere against the house. I moved into the hallway and then into the family room. My eyes moved through the room, following the sound to the far window. Then I saw it, the shadow of a man standing right behind the glass, tapping something against the window. It was too dark to see him clearly or what he was holding. I just ran straight to the living room and called 911. Eerily, the man didn't stop. I could still hear the slow tapping against the window while I was on the phone. Once officers were on the way, I went back into the hallway and looked out at the window again, hoping to be able to identify if it was the same creepy guy from earlier. But he clearly saw me because he stopped tapping, stood still for a moment, then walked away. The darkness was too much for me to make out anything, but I couldn't see how it would be anyone other than the man from before. Officers searched the area and took down notes of everything I told them. I gave a very clear description of the man that stopped by earlier. Unfortunately, they didn't find him. The only other tip came in 2 weeks later, where someone a couple streets down called the police for a very similar incident, seeing a strange man stalking their home and acting unnatural. Likely, it's the same person, but as far as what he was and possibly still is attempting to do, nobody knows. I just can't help but wonder what would have happened had I answered the door to him.